Welcome to another episode of our book club video series, Composting Competition and Moving Toward Compersion. I'm your host, Aria, and my co-host is Salina May, my metamour and fellow relationship coach. Together, we're exploring Marie Thouin's book, What is Compersion, chapter by chapter. In this episode, we're discussing Chapter 5, Spectrum of Compersion, which builds on the original spectrum of compersion created by Hypatia from space. In that original model, we have jealousy on one end of the spectrum and compersion on the other, with benevolent neutrality in the middle. Marie expanded on the spectrum of compersion with 4 stops instead of 3. She separates compersion into 2 categories, attitudinal and embodied. So we have jealousy, neutrality, attitudinal compersion, and embodied compersion. Her research shows that the jealousy-compersion spectrum is fluid and complex. It's not linear in that it doesn't always move from jealousy to embodied compersion, nor is it hierarchical. It's important to remember that feeling embodied compersion is not better or more evolved than feeling neutral or jealousy. Marie writes that any rhetoric that elevates compersion as a holy grail of polyamorous respectability should be met with suspicion, and creating moral hierarchies between different emotional states can be gravely misleading. So that's what we're talking about today, the spectrum of jealousy and compersion. Let's get Salina in here and dive in. Hey, Salina. Welcome. Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
to see you. I thought we could start with a little somatic centering meditation. How does that sound?
Perfection.
Okay, beautiful. Well, so the goal of this meditation practice is to help build a strong center inside of ourselves so that we have a place to return to no matter what's going on with our external relationships or the world around us. So if it feels good, you can close your eyes or soften your gaze. You can put a hand on your belly if that feels supportive. In this practice, we call this space center. And let's just take a couple moments to drop into the body, arrive a little more fully. Take a couple long, slow inhales through the nose, filling all the way up, and a nice big open mouth sigh. The first direction that we're going to center in is the vertical direction. So you can just imagine your sit bones firmly anchoring you to the earth while feeling your crown simultaneously rise up towards the sky, just inviting length and spaciousness in the vertical dimension, centering into our dignity, just feeling full and proud in the essence of your being. Just taking a couple breaths here. The second dimension we'll center in is the side body. You can just feel into the width of your jaw, maybe invite in a little spaciousness there. Maybe roll your shoulders up, down, just widening the wingspan. Maybe wiggling into the hips, feeling the width of the knees and the ankle bones. And we'll just center in this feeling of belonging and also feeling into our boundaries, deciding how close we want to bring people, the space we need around us to protect our peace. Take another breath here. Next direction we'll center in is the back body. Just bring some awareness to your shoulder blades, your spine, your bottom, the backs of your thighs, your calves, backs of your heels. And we'll just center into our lineage, our ancestors, everything that's come before us. And you can just call to mind someone or something that has your back. Just feel like you can lean back into that support. Take a big breath here. Just begin to feel into where the back body meets the front body. Bringing some awareness to the forehead, your cheeks, the chest and heart space. Just allowing it to be soft. Opening the belly, feeling the tops of hands, tops of thighs, the feet, tips of toes. We'll just center into our future, where our hopes and our dreams and our longings live and reside. Maybe just bring to mind one thing on your compersion journey that you're moving towards. Inviting that intention to land in the heart. So we take one breath here. And finally, we come back to this dimension of center. Just rooting into our purpose, our mission. Just bring to mind someone or something that you love. And just notice what shifts when you imagine their energy in front of you. Inviting in an intention for today's conversation as we take one final closing breath. This practice invites us to center in our dignity, our belonging, our boundaries, where we've come from, what we're moving towards, and what brings us joy and aliveness. Just notice what's shifted in this last couple moments. And when you're ready, you can invite in some gentle movement, maybe in the shoulders, take a little stretch. Mm.
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 So nice. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that practice. Okay, so today we're talking about the spectrum of compersion. Let's get into it. On page 83, Marie writes, when certain CNM dynamics were repeated and maintained over time, for example, if one's partner went out once a week for a date with a particular metamour without significant changes in either relationship, initial anxieties could get diffused as they realized their greatest fears, for example, the fear of being abandoned in favor of a metamour, were not playing out. She also writes, as long as no element in the relational ecosystem strongly inhibited gratitude or empathy, compersion would become more likely, frequent, and accessible as folks gained experience and habituation with CNM. So as I read these two sentences, what I'm understanding is that the presence of gratitude and empathy are essential elements of compersion, which we talked about in depth in chapters 3 and 4. And I think our relational ecosystem has lots of both of those things, lots of gratitude and empathy. But one thing that I was curious about is this piece about changes. And I've heard you say in the past that the introduction of me into your relational ecosystem has introduced lots of firsts for you. For example, the first kitchen table poly structure. And I'm curious, as we think about like newness and changes, would you say that the newness that I introduced creates significant changes for you in your relationship with Justin? And also like what has stayed the same?
Hmm. Rich question. It's interesting to me that you pulled this up because when I read this too, I was like, oh, like this was a little sparkly place for me as well. Part of trauma-informed practice is predictability and consistency. And I know those are the things that are really important to me. And especially in creating secure attachment with Justin, there's that consistency piece of like, we'll have stability even as like the outside world is changing. Because, there's a reality, I think, of who I am that I love. Actually, it's not, I don't think it's novelty necessarily. Like Justin talks a lot in his like E&M exploration. Novelty is a big part of that. And for me, it's not so much novelty, but I do like the like fire growth. Like that's definitely something that I'm like, I've chosen a life where I'm often on edges, and there's a part of me that loves that because I like to grow quickly. And so there's a part of me that enjoys the like growth aspects of change. And it's hard for my nervous system and lots of firsts. So there were, when you came in, and I think especially when you were operating from a really different dynamic in your relationship. And so for you, the invitation to Justin to participate, whether it was like, I mean, a variety of new experiences, um, it was too fast for me to digest and create stability, and then have to like to consistently orient and be on an edge of something new was just took me outside of my window of tolerance. And on the flip side of that, like there's been a lot of rich growth. So I'm so grateful for a lot of the experiences that Justin and I have both had since you've come into our lives, because there's been a lot of really rich explorations and growth. And there's been moments where the speed of it has felt like it took me outside of my window of tolerance. And it was hard to
Yeah.
like get to a place of internal safety. And, I'm also I've chosen a life that's really full, that I'm really grateful for, where I have a lot of passion for my career and the work I'm doing in the world. And so, like, the travel that I do for work was also new. Like, that's been a recent, like, post COVID, uh, in the last 2 years, year and a half, where all this now travel is expected of my role. So, like, Justin and I navigating trying to create stability and connection when I'm leaving the house so often for travel, on top of like new dynamics with E&M, that was like a real uh, challenging place at times.
Hmm. I appreciate your honesty. Yeah. I'm curious, how are things? I know it's been like practice of kind of trying to find the balance and the speed and the pacing that works for everyone. Do you feel like there are more explicit boundaries or pacing things that would feel helpful to get aligned on to help diffuse anxieties?
I might need to sit with that. I appreciate that. I don't think so. I think you and I have done a really beautiful job of a lot of transparency. And I'll say, so it's been interesting because I'm dating my ex again. And, we had a separation because he really needed to focus on his marriage. And we've learned a lot in that process. And I learned a lot in that process. And in part of the coming back together, something that he said, because, Justin and I have been practicing polyamory for about a decade. Him and his wife have been practicing for about 3 years. And there's differences in our experience. And he said to me recently something like, I felt like I just couldn't catch up to you, and that you were moving at a different pace than I was in my marriage. And I'm like, I hella relate to that. And it was so good to hear that from him. And especially feeling that own experience in relationship to you, of like how, and this was another invitation I made to him of why I think it's important to be connected with metamours, because then his wife might have the opportunity to share that in her own words, in a way maybe he's not able to express in his own words, or because he's getting the goodies with me and like there's new relationship energy and excitement, he might be really motivated even though it's actually putting a pressure on him, where his wife is the person who's feeling some maybe instability. And so I think there's like a lot of benefit in being in this conversation together around what's the right pace. And I think for me, I've had some awareness around moving in a monogamous minded way in a relationship that's actually polyamorous. Like, I find that in monogamy there's sometimes a fast pace like that escalator of like, we need to do more and we need to, and this is like, when actually there's this reality, especially he's a father, he has a very very busy life with family, in a similar way that I have a very busy wife with my wife family busy life with my family, a lot of expectations, where it's like, actually we can't move at that pace. Like, there is a speed and a real listening for that. So I really appreciate your question, and I feel like we're so good at listening for that. And I actually don't think there's anything at this time, but I think I'm more having insights around like, what is a sustainable pace for me and my partner, all my partners.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, I have so many questions about you and Anthony, but maybe we can save that for when we have a private conversation. And we can say focus on this book. Glad to see you smiling. Glad you guys are working through things and coming
Thanks,
up with a
Marie.
pace that feels good for everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's keep going. So, in this chapter, her research shows that many people shifted from feeling mostly jealous to mostly compersive over time as they got more comfortable with the dynamics of consensual non-monogamy, but that it's not totally linear and that for other people, they did experience deeper feelings of both compersion and jealousy as they gained more experience and either grew their emotional awareness or found themselves in specific scenarios that reduced their capacity to feel compersion that maybe they did in different situations. But one sentence that I thought really stood out was she writes how a person responds to their emotions and how they treat themselves and others as a result is a more helpful focus than to label any particular emotion as desirable or undesirable. And I'm wondering, can you speak a little bit about your journey with learning to respond to your emotions and maybe speak a little bit about like the tools that have helped you deepen your emotional awareness and why that's important for non-monogamy?
Yeah, I really appreciated this part a lot because I think there is this, I mean, for me, I'll say I absolutely want to move. I have a goal of moving towards more both like attitudes of compersion and embodiment of compersion. Like those are intentions that I'm setting. And I also am setting the intention to like be welcoming and compassionate with like whatever my experience is, because that extra resistance, like when my insecurity arises and I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't feel this way, like actually it makes it more difficult. It's easier.
Totally.
Like, and this is something lately, in the last date that you and Justin had, him and I had a rupture beforehand that I was really surprised by. Um, like that I had this trigger and something, and I for like days I was just like really frustrated with myself of like, why did I get so triggered around that? What's that like? But I sometimes get in these places of frustration with myself. I'm like, I've been working on myself forever. Why am I still getting triggered? And after, like a week of that kind of like shaming a little bit, I really was like, this is where I am. I still get triggered. And like I want to really accept and actually start shifting from this like I need to be in this compersive place to like I can anticipate I might get triggered. And anticipating that I might get triggered, how am I going to anticipate that I want to care for myself in that? And that felt like a
Mm.
little bit more of a welcoming place and actually relieves some of the pressure because I do feel pressure, especially when there's like a desire from my husband, not just you, but like where he wants more freedom and more. I mean, really for him, I think it's that he wants to feel like he can honor his desires when they emerge without having to like check them with me. So I like want to meet those things. And when I add some extra pressure on myself to do that, it actually creates the conditions for me to be even more triggered because I feel
Yeah.
pressure.
Mm.
So I'm experimenting, yeah, with that. I'm curious how you feel about that or what your
Yeah. I think
experience is. Yeah.
non-monogamy is often a triggering situation, right? There's surprises, there's situations that we haven't encountered before. This process of learning how to respond, right, with more awareness than just like going into like the automatic default triggered reactions is definitely something that's been a process for me. And I think when we first started this journey, I think my like embodied default reaction when I was triggered was just to like flee the scene, slam doors, get really loud. This guy and I were reflecting recently. He was like, "Wow, we haven't had a door slam in this house in a long time. Like, congratulations." I was like, "Yeah, thank you. We've really been working on that." Just being like, "Ooh, okay, I'm gonna breathe through this and like resist my urge to like get loud and like make a big scene."
Yeah.
Um, so I think mindfulness has been a huge part of that. He and I meditate together almost every morning. We have a gratitude practice. We've been pulling cards from that deck you gave me, which has been really
Oh,
sweet. Yeah. So I think like having tools just to help create like that inner listening room to be like, how am I feeling today? What am I needing? has been a really positive practice. And I've said this before, but I challenge all of my group coaching students to start a meditation practice just to be like, let's create time to like be in relationship with ourselves first and foremost. So that has been a game changer for me. And it's just like a practice that's grown over the years. And I mean, I for sure still get triggered. And I think this chapter is so helpful to be like, okay, the point is not to like create a hierarchy or like
Yeah.
shame ourselves for feeling jealous. And I think so often that can be the case, right? It's like compersion is the goal. And it's like, actually, maybe just neutrality is the goal, right? Just like being at ease is the goal. Maybe we don't have to feel that bubbly excitement. And maybe we never will. And like, that's okay. So I really appreciated like this spectrum, right? It's like so many people are like, my goal is to be like feel compersion and feel happy. And it's like, well, there's lots of other little steps along the way, which
Yeah.
feels more attainable.
Yeah, and rich. And like I think something really clicked for me, especially as like a meditation and mindfulness practitioner, of like the accepting of our whole human experience and how important that is. And for me, energetically, there's so much that shifts when I'm like, I accept myself as I am in this moment, and not because the resistance, like I'm gonna resist my own experience, actually creates more escalation and more tension in the body. And then I can go to a fight place, which causes ruptures and makes things worse. But it's like, can I really practice being in this place of like, I can't anticipate I'm going to have some feelings of this, and I'm going to anticipate actually how I might care for this. And it's beautiful, actually. It's more, I enjoy a more easeful space of inner peace, like bless that when it comes. Like there's some times when that happens. I'm also going to accept when it doesn't.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that proactive idea of like, okay, let me anticipate that I might be triggered around this upcoming situation. Like, what are the, yeah, thinking about the choices ahead of time that we might make instead of just allowing like the default triggered response to come online really quickly.
I mean, it feels good because it does exhaust me when I get triggered and then I go to a fight place with Justin. That's exhausting. I really want to instead, like I do want that goal of I'm less triggered and I have more inner stability, right? But that may not be realistic for where I am in this moment.
Yeah, good to set attainable goals.
Amen.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's keep moving. I thought this was an interesting section. So she talks about negative experiences
Yeah.
and labeling them as compersion. She says whether empathy for negative experiences should be labeled as compersion is up for debate. So I thought we could have a little dialogue about this. And I realized when I read this that apparently on some level I do see empathy is for negative experiences as compersion. A couple episodes ago, when we were talking about your painful breakup, I had said something like, getting dropped so abruptly feels really similar to a breakup that I had gone through. And I had said, like, I feel so much compersion that you had to experience such a shitty breakup too. And then I actually edited that sentence out of the recording because, in some sense, as I was listening to it, I was like, oh, I'm not sure I'm actually using that word correctly. I think what I meant to say was, I have so much empathy that you had to go through that breakup. But what I said was, I have so much compersion that you went through that breakup. So I guess on some level, like, negative experiences I do think about as compersion, and I'm curious, how does that land for you? Do you think negative experiences should count in this bucket of compersion, or do you think about compersion only as the positive things?
I like the spirit of it and the essence of it that I really hear in that, which I feel like, we've talked about this before. It's like under, what are like the building blocks of compersion? And for me, like empathy is there, which is like that mudita, the like sympathetic joy. And it's also the compassion for somebody suffering. And for me, that is all like they're holding hands. I think it's such a beautiful muscle to build. And I know actually what's motivated me sometimes to compersion has been witnessing some of Justin's sadness or like disappointment, or, there's a like whether it's, as a married man, it's been hard for him to find dates. Like it's just been like a struggle. And there's been some times when I've witnessed like him really struggling, with women consistently flaking on him, or like something kind of like fizzling out, or that motivates me to want to be really supportive when I can see he's like struggling to plan dates or find. I see that as an important piece because ultimately it's like this care. And I think, there's compersion for like my partner's joy and the connection and the happiness that he feels in dating. But there's also this empathy and care, that like collective care in a polycule, that I think for me, especially, when I was speaking to Anthony about the need that he had to focus on his marriage, like I actually felt a lot of empathy and understanding for what him and his wife were experiencing. Like that's so easy for me, actually, as someone who's really struggled with polyamory. Like that comes very easily. And I think that's so needed when we're talking about like a sustainable, balanced, like healthy poly ecosystem, is there's actually like this deep care, empathy, and sympathetic joy. Like all of those things I think are really interrelated and really important. So like it doesn't so much matter to me around like, oh, am I using the word right? But I just it's for me it's more about like these qualities that I know help create a thriving ecosystem. Yeah, what do you think?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and it is interesting to like take away like, okay, compersion is only the positive things, right? It's not the negative things. It's like if our hearts are open and we're feeling into what each other needs and are trying to like be there and empathize, like I think that all counts in my book. And yeah, it's interesting to kind of broaden it and be like, okay, it's not just the positive empathy. It's like, yeah, having compassion for the full spectrum of human experiences.
Hmm. Yeah, and I feel like something that you and I have done so beautifully that I really appreciate is how easily we care for each other, like how naturally that's happened. Yeah, I love that. Whether it's like happiness for each other, but just care. It's like this underlying compassionate care.
Yeah, I feel like the metamour relationship again and again is like such a key piece of building conversion. And I'm curious if you feel like sharing, do you think there will be an opportunity to build that connection with Anthony's wife as you guys kind of rebuild your relationship?
Yes, so was something that has felt really important to me, and like getting back together. And I think I'm really mindful because especially in hearing when he shared that like he felt like I was moving at a different pace than he was. I want to honor that meeting the metamour can feel like stress to a lot of people. And I've definitely felt that way years ago, where like I just wasn't at that place. Like it felt too overwhelming and like outside of my window of tolerance to do. So I have that awareness of like I really want to honor where people are at, and I want to advocate for what I think could be really powerful. So they are open and willing, and it's something I've meditated a lot on like how do I show up to that meeting and up to my relationship with her with a lot of compassion, understanding, honoring, acceptance, and collaboration, which is something that really truly like feels so important to me. And especially after we broke up, because our dynamic wasn't sustainable in the context of his relationship. Like I'm very, very clear around how key that is, like for the
Hmm.
relationship to feel manageable for everybody. And that's something I really truly want. And like like I said, it's really had me second guess like some of the ways I think I would operate in monogamy, of like we need to always be moving towards more, which I'm just like, what is it like to kind of just like enjoy the way things are? And especially since he's been out of my life for so long, it's like just such a joy to have him back. Like I saw him Saturday night for like 30 minutes on my way driving up from the bay. And I really was so present with like, I'm so grateful for this. Whereas in the past, I was honestly often like, I wish I could see you for more. Why can't, like this isn't enough time, like really in this deficit place. And I think now I'm really much more trying to embrace this attitude of gratitude of like, I'm grateful we both have like these 30 minutes to like sit in a park and just chat. Like what a delight.
Hmm.
I don't need it to be more. I don't need, does that make sense?
Yeah. It sounds like a very Buddhist philosophy of just like acceptance of what is, and like gratitude for the moment, and yeah, acceptance of where everyone's at, and abundance for being able to be in connection with multiple people that you care about, whether it's, 30 minutes or you live together or, yeah.
Ooh. And often those separations I know help me be in more gratitude around like how special this is. And that's something about polyamory, especially, I live in a small town in Grass Valley and I travel a lot for work. So there's lots of dynamics where if I want to date someone in Los Angeles or I'm traveling to Portland a lot for work, if I want to date someone in Portland, I may only see them 3 times a year. Like, what is it like to really accept this is our dynamic and I'm going to lean into the gifts that it gives? I don't know, it feels like a really healthy way for me. And I'm trying to do that, especially in the context of like my insecure, disorganized attachment system, which sometimes is hard because I can wrestle with that insecure attachment. But I'm really trying to work that edge.
Yeah, I think there's something really powerful about like going into a connection without expectations, without like we have to do this, and that's what shows the world that it's like a real relationship. And you talked about the relationship escalator, and I think it's really easy to fall into kind of that monogamous thinking of like how are we moving forward and upwards. And I think one thing that I like about my connection with Justin is we decided not to use traditional labels, because I feel like it's so easy to be like, he's my boyfriend, and then it's supposed to mean certain things, or he's my partner. He made it very clear that like you are his partner and that he doesn't have capacity for another partner. So the label we've been using is sustainable sweeties, which I think is so cute because it's just like it can be sustainable, and sustainable means moving at the pace of everyone. Yeah, there's like no cultural expectations about what a sweetie is supposed to be. Let's just create up a new term that doesn't come with a lot of pressure or expectation to have it
Totally.
look any certain way.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's really important. I love that a word that Anthony uses a lot is co-design. I've been really appreciating that in this chapter. And I think polyamory can often, that's like something I think even those who intentionally choose monogamy could really borrow is like this relationship gets to be co-designed by all of us and doesn't have to look a certain way. Like we really get to
Mhm.
intuit like how this works for us.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like it invites in so much more creativity. It's like, what do we want to co-create? And if we move away from expectations and assumptions, there's so much more freedom in
Yeah.
that, I think, to build something that is sustainable and unique to the people within it. What
Amen.
a gift. Hmm. Yeah. Well, I want to be respectful of time boundaries. Should we move to a little close? Or is there anything else in this chapter that you feel is worth highlighting?
Hmm. I think I'm curious, in this like talking about intentions or goals, because I think both of us we are very growth oriented. I do often like set intentions for myself, and I think intention and goal can, energetically feel a little bit different. Sometimes goal is giving like white supremacy or like I want to achieve this thing, and intention is much more for me like spiritual and feels a little more process oriented and a little less like goal oriented. But I am curious for you, what's like a current intention or goal you have around the compersion work, like acknowledging that like it's not the goal, but yeah, I'm curious about
Hmm, I like that question. I think a main intention that I'm working on in a lot of areas of my life is really recognizing the abundance that is here. I think there's like an intergenerational pattern that comes from my father's lineage of lack mentality, and it's something that he and I actually worked on in our first psychedelic ceremony together recently. And it's something that I've become aware of as I moved away from my corporate job, and
that. Hmm.
yeah, just like really have shifted the way I earn, the way I, yeah, make a living. And and I'm aware that it can show up sometimes in my relationships too, is just like a tendency to like look at like the lack, like Sky's going to New Year's with Bex. That's taking something away from me. And I think the more that I can just like stay centered in an abundant mentality and like actually like they are going to do something that they're both really excited about. Like I actually don't want to go on that trip with them. And like there is so many other opportunities for me to connect and feel supported and be in community. And I think it's really like a mindset shift. I think it's so easy to focus on what we don't have or
Mm,
yeah, that's something that I'm just aware of across a lot of areas of my life is just like really remaining in gratitude for all of the gifts and not focusing on what I don't have.
girl. Yeah. I love that. I love that so much. And it's challenging work and
Yeah.
so powerful, especially, you and I are so blessed and so privileged and have so much opportunity, especially like even the opportunity to be polyamorous in a way that our parents like did not have. And whew, even the opportunity to like on New Year's have the money or the resource or the time or the space to like dream up something.
Hmm.
Like what a mindset shift. I appreciate and admire that.
Yeah. Yeah. Any intentions that are clear for you in this moment?
I think, I named earlier, what is it like to really start to accept where I am? And like, I'm always gonna, because I'm so growth oriented, like always going to be moving and wanting myself to grow. And there's a reality where dates are still hard for me. I still get activated and I want to like with a really deep care anticipate that and anticipate I can take care of that. That's an intention. I also I've been doing this Kundalini prosperity portal that one of my amazing friends, Shirley Johnson, leads these epic prosperity portals. And we're doing this mudra for trust. And so we do it every day for 40 days. And it's been really shifting for me. This like idea of internal prosperity is like some of that trust. And as I've been meditating a lot in the practice, cultivating this real anchoring and trust for my husband. It's like I have 12 years of data that he is deeply devoted to me and he treasures me. And it feels so beautiful and powerful when I can really sit in that abundance of like, I trust him actually to make really awesome decisions that honor me and take care of me. And what a gift and delight that we treasure each other so much. I, I I'm really holding an intention to like really hang out in that place and keep churning
Mm.
up that place. Like I can allow the hurt, wounded, trauma survivor part of me that like is like, but what if, or but I'm not sure. And I not don't need to make her go away, but I really want to like wrap this abundant, trusting, yeah, arms around her.
Oh, I love that visual so much. Yeah, and I really appreciate and admire the like the affection that Justin has for you and like he talks about you all the time and it's really sweet to like see the care and love that is there between you two and yeah, I really honor that and it's a beautiful thing to witness.
Aw, thanks, honey. You're cute. Anthony watched some
Hmm.
of these videos. I sent them to him yesterday because I actually hadn't caught him up. He just came back into my life a couple weeks ago. So I'm like, told him, I'm like, Aria and I are doing this project. He's like, whoa, that's so cool. And he watched the videos, some of them, and he's like, wow, you guys really care about each other. It's so sweet. He's like, it's really felt. And I was like, I know, we're so lucky.
Oh,
Yeah.
cute. I love that he's watching them.
Me too.
Well, should we move to a little close?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if it feels good, let's just come back to a comfy position. Maybe close the eyes or soften the gaze. And we'll just return briefly to the somatic centering meditation that we started with. Maybe just putting a hand again on the belly, Just inviting in, centering into all of our values and all of the dimensions, breathing into our length and our dignity, just inviting the crown to rise up as the body feels relaxed and anchored into this earth, into your home. Centering into the sense of belonging, just bringing some gratitude for the polycule, for all of the support and the connections and the care and the boundaries. Just feeling again into that back body, all of the generations that came before us, all of the love stories that happened for us to be birthed in this moment, to be in this space together. And just moving into the front body, holding our dreams and our hopes for creating an ecosystem of care and collaboration with all of the partners and all of the metamours, just building into that felt sense of safety. And just coming back to the center, maybe just bringing to mind your partners, that sense of love and trust in your husband, just really filling up with gratitude and compassion and compersion. Taking one final breath here as we move to close. Maybe rolling the shoulders, taking a little stretch, fluttering the eyes open. I hope you can move through the rest of your day from this place of being centered, feeling into all of the care and the trust and the compassion here.
Yay.
Yay. Yeah, so nice to see you. Thanks for being here.
Amen.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this book club video series, Composting Competition and Moving Toward Compersion. You can subscribe to my weekly newsletter at ariadiana.substack.com to receive emails when another episode drops, as well as more tips and advice for people practicing non-monogamy, which you can find only on Substack. Come join us there in the subscriber-only chat and let us know your own experiences moving along the jealousy-compersion spectrum. Be well.